Dr. Nicola Abram. I'm a lecturer in Literatures in English at the University of Reading, and I'm really pleased to share with you my readings of Zadie Smith's first novel, White Teeth. It's a very full and very funny book, and it invites us into some important discussions around cultural identity and contemporary life in London. White Teeth was published in the millennium year, and I'm particularly interested in the ways in which significant historical moments are refracted through the personal and individual experiences of the characters. We're going to look together at one example passage. Here we find Milat, the younger of the Iqbal twins, travelling to Bradford with his so-called Ragastani crew to protest against the publication of Salman Rushdie's controversial novel, The Satanic Verses. This is an instance where Smith attaches the plot of the novel to a real, historical event that took place on the 14th of January 1989, in which a copy of Rushdie's book was burned. "You read it?" asked Raneal, as they whizzed past Finsbury Park. There was a general pause. Milat said, "I haven't exactly read it, but I know all about that shit, yeah?" To be more precise, Milat hadn't read it. Milat knew nothing about the writer, nothing about the book, could not identify the book if it lay in a pile of other books, could not pick out the writer in a lineup of other writers. Irresistible, this lineup of offending writers: Socrates, Protagoras, Ovid and Juvenal, Radcliffe Hall, Boris Pasternak, D.H. Lawrence, Solzhenitsyn, Nabokov, all holding up their numbers for the mugshot, squinting in the flashbulb. But he knew other things. He knew that he, Milat, was a Paki, no matter where he came from, that he smelt of curry, had no sexual identity, took other people's jobs, or had no job and bummed off the state, or gave all the jobs to his relatives. That he could be a dentist or a shop owner or a curry shifter, but not a footballer or a filmmaker. That he should go back to his own country or stay here and earn his bloody keep. That he worshipped elephants and wore turbans. That no one who looked like Milat or spoke like Milat or felt like Milat was ever on the news unless they had recently been murdered. In short, he knew he had no face in this country, no voice in this country, until the week before last, when suddenly people like Milat were on every channel and every radio and every newspaper, and they were angry. And Milat recognised the anger, thought it recognised him, and grabbed it with both hands. Just before this extract, the boys have been accusing Rushdie of blasphemy, anticipating the fatwa that was issued against him on the 14th of February 1989. They also deride him as being a coconut, a derogatory slang term, meaning that he's white on the inside. And they even claim that he's not able to spell. But notice how the narrator makes it clear in this passage that the book itself isn't the real source of the boys' anger, and neither is its author. Milat actually knows nothing about either, as he almost confesses. But we are told that he knew other things. The boys' ill-informed posturing is followed by a pretty powerful insight into Milat's life experiences, and he's only about 13 years old at this point. We read a sequence of statements that Milat supposedly knew. In fact, these aren't Milat's own opinions, but rather a recitation of the scripts that British society speaks to and about him and his immigrant Bangladeshi Muslim family. Notice the humour with which these statements are arranged. The repetitious phrasing serves to make the contradictions visible. So apparently, migrants like Milat's parents not only steal other people's jobs, but also have no job and are supported by the state, and give all the jobs to their relatives. Clearly, these things can't all be true at once, and juxtaposing them so starkly reveals the ignorance of such statements. Similarly, we read the idea that Milat should both go back to his own country and stay here and pay his way. You might notice how this same rhetoric is so often also applied to other ethnic groups, revealing it to be a transferable tool of prejudice rather than an accurate description of a specific situation. We might say that Milat has been interpolated by statements like these. Not only has he been addressed by them, but they actually serve to shape who he becomes. So Milat's eventual decision to join Kevin, the unfortunate acronym for the radical militant group Keepers of the Eternal and Victorious Islamic Nation, can be read as a result of the hostility he experiences, the hostility documented here, and not as the cause of it. Smith is careful not to validate this response, though. The narrator keeps a critical distance from Milat's views. So we read in parentheses that the experience of taking offence is irresistible. Ironically, being offended becomes its own kind of pleasure. This blinkered bigotry presumes anyone who disagrees with it to be criminal, as figured in the image of the police lineup of political writers. But despite the narrator's caution about any kind of absolutist thinking, Milat is very much attracted to the reactive anger he sees on the television. This is the only community and sense of belonging that remain available to him. We see here, I think, how powerful acts of representation can be. Once, Milat had no face in this country, no voice in the country. He never saw people like himself in films or on television or written about in books. But now his experiences are validated in public, and he wants to be a part of it. Smith has written elsewhere about the relationship between reading, writing, and identity in an essay about the novel Their Eyes Were Watching God by the African-American author Zora Neale Hurston. Recording her own development as a reader, Smith was initially resistant to the idea that your identity affects how you respond to a text. We read this. I wanted to be an objective aesthete and not a sentimental fool. I disliked the idea of identifying with the fiction I read. I wanted to like Hurston because she represented good writing, not because she represented me. This idea of objectively seeking artistic excellence certainly seems persuasive. But Smith goes on to recount her realisation of the extra-literary significance that certain books have for certain readers. Again, we read, it is understandable that Hurston's reclaiming should be an emotive and personal journey for black readers and black critics. Fact is, I am a black woman, and a slither of this book goes straight into my soul. As Smith admits to us here, reading involves soul. Words have the power to shape us and the world around us. And back in White Teeth, Milat's soul seems to be similarly pierced by hearing his own experiences echoed in the media. So what I think Smith's novel asks us to consider is this: whose language is being used and whose experiences are being validated? And what might be the consequences of silencing a soul?